Hi everyone, thanks for joining this week's episode of the Recruitment Reality Podcast. I'm honoured to be interviewing, if you like, or chatting with Paul, who is actually based out in Nairobi, but today is in New York. Paul is the founder and CEO of Shortlist, and really excited to have this conversation. I'm super interested because I know a little bit about how the company has evolved over time and just understand what's driven that and what people can learn from it, really, Paul. So rather than me doing an intro, it'd be great if you could give us the headlines, really.
Yeah, sounds good. Great to hear. Great to be here, Woody. Thanks for having me. So I'm the founder and CEO of Shortlist. Shortlist started as an HR tech platform focused on assessments and screening tools that we would license to companies. And as we've evolved, we've built more of a business that blends executive search with large scale youth employment programming across Sub-Saharan Africa. And just to kind of like take a step back in terms of how we got here, I had spent many years before this in financial inclusion, microfinance, and actually was running a venture capital fund investing in fintech startups. And kind of came to this because all the companies I was investing in Africa and India, after they'd get the money in the door, their biggest problem became people, and was surprised at how manual and challenging the recruitment process was. I think at the same time, there was this broader hope or vision as well that we could play some sort of role in helping figure out how this next generation of youth in Africa and Asia gets access to jobs. I think that what drew me to microfinance years ago was the opportunity to give loans to people to improve their lives. I was getting a little bit far afield doing a bunch of digital payment startups, and what's going on in the tech trends with future of work and remote work and everything else, a whole new world of possibilities in terms of how young people can get access to opportunity. I think is presenting us with a lot of opportunities. And so Shortlist journey, I'm sure we'll get into it, but it's been this journey from initially thinking we could disrupt and solve everything with tech to now having this kind of newfound respect for the role of human touch in getting the kinds of recruiting outcomes that can really unlock the potential of companies and get people working in the right jobs.
Yeah, it's honestly so interesting, and obviously what Shortlist started out as is very similar to what Willo is
Yeah.
really now. What going back, as far as you're willing to, what led you to actually get involved in the African market specifically? Obviously, there's plenty of markets out there that have a similar challenge around microfinancing,
Yeah.
etc. What led you to the African market?
My co-founder and I had been, my co-founder was investing in clean energy startups across Africa and Asia. I was investing in fintech startups. And so for both of us, it's always been emerging markets, Africa, India, that has kind of drawn us in, where we built our network and where we love doing work. We actually started our business in India, and based on sheer market size alone, would have guessed that India would perhaps be the better market for us. I think that we were drawn to Africa in part because it presented a little bit more white space. There were far fewer recruiting firms. There were far fewer job boards, HR tech platforms operating. And I think that what really convinced us to make this the focus of our company are the market forces and the demographics. Africa is by far the youngest continent on Earth. The average age of UK is 40, US is around 40. Average age in most parts of Africa is 17 or 18. So there are more people entering the workforce in Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, no less, in the next 10 years than the rest of the world combined. That's including India, China. And so I think that presents a big opportunity as well as a bit of a potential crisis if we don't think more creatively about how young people on the continent are going to be employed and how that human capital and that energy can be put to great use in the modern digital economy. And so I think that as we looked at the market, there's also a lot of exciting things happening in the venture space. Venture funding has been way up. Lot of new innovations, looking at how tech and business models could be innovated on the continent, how this emerging middle class and market can be served. So I think you kind of smush all this together, and we just decided that we could be the most differentially effective and probably have the most fun trying to work on these challenges on the continent, as opposed to some of the other markets we might be in.
Interesting. And you touched sort of briefly there on, I guess, immaturity of the recruitment market out there. And I guess that would be a big challenge as a HR tech company. You're not just trying to build a market for your tech,
Sure.
you're actually part of the building of a recruitment market, full stop.
Yeah.
What does it, what does competition actually mean to you in that marketplace at the moment?
Yeah, it depends on the business we're looking at, but it's I think Africa presents, and of course it's hard to talk about it as one monolithic market because it really is every country different. But for shorthand, I think Africa presents a lot of opportunity, but a lot of challenges. Depends on who you ask, but in many markets you'll see unemployment rates up to 40 to 50% of people under 30. And with unemployment at that level, there can be a lot of noise as a company trying to sort out who to hire. So a lot of the approaches that are not perfect, but generally get to an outcome in terms of job boards and ways of posting for jobs in markets in the West don't always work as well in Africa. You post a job in Nigeria and you might instantly have 1,000 applicants, and it's really hard to sort out who's who, particularly because you don't have much data on these folks, and the data you do have may or may not provide any signal as to whether someone can do the job. And I know this is something you're working on. It's certainly something with the tech we've built as well, where part of what we're trying to do is collect more relevant data points through things like skills assessments and chatbot and things like that. And part of it is just how do you automate the use of that data so a human being doesn't have to look at every single one of these and figure out who's a fit, but there's some sort of filtration at the top of the funnel. And so I think that's where we've come in a bit at the kind of junior mid levels. At the more senior levels, there's a lot of it's still a relatively nascent market in terms of having the kind of been there, done that startup talent. There aren't the same number of companies that have successfully built, scaled businesses, exited. So then you don't have that next generation of leaders who've been exposed to that, learn from that, off building their own companies. I think that presents a huge opportunity for the market, but also from a talent perspective, we often have to dig a little bit deeper when we're running executive searches, dig a little deeper, think creatively about where someone may have picked up the necessary skills or experience in kind of an ancillary field or sector, and often try to work with companies on how do you invest in that talent and bringing up that talent so they can fill the role you need.
And how often at the exec level are you recruiting within country, within continent, and then outside of continent, I guess?
Yeah.
So
in the vast majority of instances, we're looking for people with local context from that market. I think most companies are starting from the desire of and the belief that hiring someone from the local market will bring advantages in terms of better local context, ability to get things done. And I think that's often true. There are instances, particularly for extremely niche and technical roles, where we and our clients know that that's been there, done that skill set does not exist in the market. And of course, in those situations, we've got to look anywhere in the world where we might find that person. But by and large, what we're trying to do is help bring up the local talent markets so that for the local companies hiring, particularly the startups, they can build robust teams locally. And then beyond that, looking to help companies around the world think more creatively about how to build remote first teams. Sometimes that has meant, for example, us working with companies in Africa who have found the software engineering talent perhaps too the market too thin. So we'll help them build engineering teams in India. And in other instances, we're looking at opportunities where global companies are turning to African talent for opportunities in software engineering, but even more so areas around data labeling or sales development reps or customer success representatives. These areas where young Africans who speak English as their native language and are quite digitally savvy can fill those roles really effectively for global companies.
Yeah, wow. It's really interesting. I went to a British Chamber of Commerce event a few years ago, and the lack of serious interest in like the recruitment market and technology and just everything on the continent of Africa. And you're so right to point out, everybody talks about Africa, but it's there's a lot of countries
Yeah, yeah,
within
that's true.
Africa. It's not one place, and they're all very unique. So, but the lack of sort of emphasis to make something of that opportunity is pretty crazy, really. And I thought maybe by now things like a recruitment market would have come on, but it sounds like even in 10 years ago since I went to that thing, things haven't progressed that much in terms of that recruitment services industry.
I think it is nascent, but I think it is changing quickly. I think that as billions of dollars of venture funding have flooded in, particularly in key markets like Nigeria, Egypt, Kenya, South Africa, I think that people are turning their focus to the human capital side of the equation and realizing how strategic and critical this is to figure out. So both in these markets, and a lot of the money's coming from abroad, but within Africa, I think there's an increasing recognition of the importance of getting hiring right, getting recruiting right, and that it's not just an administrative function you can kind of push off onto your HR team and hope it gets done. And on a global level, I think that the world can't ignore the youth bulge in Africa. I mean, I think in the next 5 to 10 years, increasingly, this is going to be a topic of global significance. And I think on the scary side, I think it is a real risk to the world if we don't think creatively about how young Africans are getting put to work, what opportunities exist in the global digital economy. But it's also a huge opportunity. And so I do hope, to your point, that companies start to get more strategic and thoughtful about building access points into talent markets here, thinking creatively about where to build some foundational skills and training programs. And I know that this is a topic of interest for some of the biggest companies of the world. Microsoft, Google, others have been starting to make more significant investments in training and talent development. I'm hoping that's something that leads to others around the world thinking about that as well.
Absolutely. So just kind of switching gears slightly, but usually I start with asking this question, but I'm just so fascinated that we've meandered already. But what's your in the talent market that you are in as a focusing as a recruiter or organization? What are the kind of common biggest challenges that you're actually facing on a day-to-day?
Yeah, I think there's many. One, of course, as I mentioned, is for certain positions, the talent market is still thin. And that's not in any way a statement on the potential and the intelligence, the skill of the market. It's just the reality of how economies have developed and where those opportunities are and how many people have had the chance to get exposure to the kind of, and again, we work mostly with startups, the kinds of unique dimensions of working in a startup. And so thinking creatively about where that talent might be and how you attract them. I think that there's a noise issue and finding signal in the noise issue. Part of that noise comes from just the sheer volume of job applicants at the junior mid-level. Like I said, it's not infrequent to have 1,000, 2,000 people applied for a
Wow.
position with a single role. So sorting through that by hand is quite difficult.
People in the US would kill for that.
You think that until you have that. I
Till you
think
get it.
I mean, there's
well,
no question. There's like kind of a Goldilocks sweet spot of what you want. If you have 3 people apply, you're in trouble. If you have 2,000, you're in trouble. I don't know what the right number is. 50,
Yeah.
80, whatever the right number is, that you get enough people to be sure you've got a good cross section. You can make a good choice, but not too many. I think the other noise issue is just the data is bad. Around the world, people rely on CVs to make decisions, but often in our markets, at a junior level, CVs aren't a function of how smart someone is, what potential they have. It's a function of, what fancy school or not did their parents send them to, and how did that lead to opportunities. And so we'd love to see more innovations. I think we're working on part of this, but certainly not the whole answer. More innovations that improve the kinds of competency data that we're able to look at to get people placed. The last thing I'll mention, because I could probably go on the challenges all day, is just I do think that recruiting and hiring is often thought of as an afterthought by many strategic leaders. It's not something that CEOs are necessarily putting front and center. I think every CEO would probably say people, it's among the most important part of their business and key to success. But when it really comes down to putting their money where their mouth is, putting their time where their mouth is, you don't always see that commitment. And I think the companies that have been winning in Africa over the last few years are often the ones that have made it a real strategic push up and down the organization to develop winning employer brands, thinking strategically about talent sourcing, thinking strategically about talent development and assessment. And I think that trend will continue. But as a recruiting business, it can sometimes be a challenge to try to get the mind share that we need from leaders to make it a priority.
Yeah, interesting. And that is a challenge that's kind of synonymous with a lot of startup companies in the UK anyway. And our people are super important to us, but if they're not the right people, get rid of them quickly. It's no focus put on. Well, it's a lack of time quite often, I think, or a perceived lack of time and investment. I'm interested to know more about sort of what employer branding looks like in your world. So, over here it's about authenticity and building trust and candidate testimonials and that kind of stuff. But when you're getting 2,000 applications for one role, it's a completely different world altogether. So I'm really interested to hear what does employer branding actually mean out there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know that there's a single answer. I think, I assume many markets, what most folks are looking for is the opportunity for growth. So I think in some ways, maybe the topics like authenticity, I think those resonate everywhere in the world. But mostly employers are trying to present how working at their companies will present opportunities for career advancement, intellectual development, of course, compensation trajectory. I think that I think the other thing that's unique is trying to think about purpose and market impact. I think more and more there's become more and more of kind of a crossover and merger, particularly with a lot of startups, with a kind of impact thesis. I wouldn't quite say save the world, elevate the world's consciousness type thing, but more linking how the work being done by companies is solving genuinely hard problems on the continent and problems worth solving. And so I think that more and more at a company level, storytelling around customer experiences, how the company's generating and caring about its impact are getting told quite frequently, and we're telling those stories quite frequently on behalf of companies. I also think this is happening at the sector level. A lot of the work we do is actually trying to help young people navigate where are the emerging career opportunities for them. And an example I'll give is clean energy. we do a lot of work to drive awareness of clean energy as a viable career path for young people. I think that a lot of in my own story, totally different, but I'm from a small town in Western New York where we didn't know. I never was informed, other than like a doctor, a lawyer, things like that. I didn't know what jobs existed. Nobody ever told me McKinsey existed. Nobody ever told me Goldman Sachs existed. And I think that there's a dynamic in many parts of Africa where the local knowledge around where to focus and get educated and build your career is antiquated. People, ask their aunts or uncles, where should we get a job? And people are telling them, go get an insurance, go work in an insurance company. Which is not bad, but you're missing the fact that a sector like clean energy is growing at an order of magnitude faster clip than most of these traditional sectors, and it's creating local jobs with career track opportunities. So a lot of where we can have impact is not focusing on particular companies or employer brands, but more the brand of particular sectors and making a choice to pursue career opportunities in places that are growing as opposed to places that might be stable or stagnating. So yeah, a lot of focus on the kind of purpose and impact and hard problems dimension of things.
That's super interesting, and I guess it kind of aligns to obviously working with mainly startups because they're the kind of disruptive industries that tend to be purpose led, tend to be in sort of clean energy, etc., and obviously aren't the tried and tested paths. I totally agree. If I think back to my careers conversations at school, it was like be a lawyer, a doctor, or a business owner. It's like, well, just go straight to being a business owner. That's easy. No thought of how you actually get there. So when you actually are getting in these, this huge influx of candidates, how you talked about some of the technology that you use, etc., and basically searching for potential over, paper. How are you actually going about assessing the talent that's coming through the door? I guess on one side, from an exec side of things, it's very different because that's all about sourcing and finding the right person first. But on the more volume side, how do you go about assessing that?
It's certainly important to distinguish the two sides of our business. We'll set executive search aside, but that is much more a process of mapping the market, cultivating talent. And as we're evaluating talent through conversations and interviews, there's, of course, they're evaluating us and they're evaluating the employer and the opportunity in front of them. So much more of a hands-on process cultivating that senior talent. At the more junior and entry level side, we're trying to find the right blend of tech and human touch. Certainly at the top of the funnel, we lean a lot more on tech to automate the data collection and the filtering. So what we'll often do is run marketing campaigns and develop different partnerships with educational institutions, local grassroots organizations, NGOs to get the word out on programs and opportunities and try to help spread the word. Sometimes it's simply, hey, there's a lot of career growth possible in, let's say, clean energy. Other times it's more oriented on the purpose and the impact, but get people into the top. We use kind of a few different steps. We'll use, in most cases, an initial filtration where we use our chatbot to collect information to just gauge basic qualification. If the program we're running is focused on entry level, making sure someone has less than 2 years experience. If it's more experienced, do you have the right years experience? Are you in a market, country or county that we're currently running programming? Kind of the easier things to filter in, and that right off the bat both filters based on the data, but also filters based on intentionality and interest and motivation. Like, are people going to be willing to do that? Then we get into more competency and skill assessments. And in most cases, we'll do some sort of analytical reasoning or cognitive abilities test. And then based on whatever track or job area someone might be applying for, we really believe in the power of work samples. And this is building off decades old research that has consistently shown that of all the predictive things that you can get to, the combination of a cognitive abilities test, a work sample, and a structured interview is going to yield the best result. So if we can get kind of two of those three as top of funnel screening, that's a good start. And those work samples tend to try to ask questions that are not brain teasers or trying to trip anyone up. It's more like, you're applying for a finance job. Let's give you a financial model or a balance sheet and ask you a couple questions about it and see how you make sense of it.
So a work sample's like an
exercise,
exactly relevant
that's
to
right.
the job, right?
But that can be auto scored so that we don't need to have an army of humans looking at every answer. Then this is normally where the human touch side comes in. We'll reach out to many people. We'll do quick interviews / question and answer sessions to try to help people understand where the opportunities are. What are the more textured dimensions of what this person's looking for, and then of course try to help make the matching happen. And sometimes the matching is to a training provider who can give them the skills to get to the next step. Other times we're directly putting people into work experiences. And one of our foundational beliefs is that as quickly as possible, we should get people on the job. I think education's great, but I think we probably have too much education right now in Sub-Saharan Africa, and not enough learning on the job, and all of the things that really can only be learned when you're sitting on the job. So a lot of the work we do is focused on getting people into these companies, into these jobs as quickly as possible, in hopes that they'll succeed in those jobs, but if nothing else, so that they can get the on-the-job training and exposure that will, and the item to put onto their LinkedIn profile or their CV to help them get the next opportunity.
And what just talking about onboarding, what percentage of those people are remote versus on-premise or hybrid, or whatever,
I think it's certainly evolving. More and more of the opportunities we're looking for are remote, even if they're in the same market. So we've been doing a lot of work around the data labeling sector. These are these jobs where people are looking at images from autonomous vehicles and tagging. Is that a stop sign? Is that a person? So that algorithms can get smarter. A lot of the companies have local presences in Kenya, and yet are shifting away from office models to work from home models. So I think there has been a big shift to more off-prem models for employment, and then many jobs are just naturally off-prem. We do a lot of work with field sales agents working across Africa to help promote solar home systems and solar products to households. Right. Those are by very definition, you're out, feet on the street, talking to people.
You are remote.
You were remote before COVID. You're remote now.
Yeah, exactly. If you weren't remote before COVID,
you weren't a very good salesperson. Exactly. And it's introduced a whole new dimension of challenge on the infrastructure front. And one of the things we are working on is around laptops access and laptop financing. One of the things we're seeing is that more and more, to participate in the global digital economy, you need a pretty good machine to do that, and it needs to meet minimum specifications to do that. And oftentimes you need to have that machine in order to start day one of work. And so we're looking at, with different partners, ways we can kind of systematically unblock that access point and financing points around laptops, suitable smartphones, etc.
Yeah, that is a different challenge altogether to have to deal with.
I think one of the things you see working in the markets we do is that you often have to take a full stack approach to the work that you're doing. Whereas, my experience in the US, there's often such well-developed value chains for whatever you're trying to do, that if you can kind of be really focused and specialized and solve one thing really well, that's great, and you'll make a real contribution. I think one of the things we've seen is that if we want these talent ecosystems to be healthy and functioning and friction-free, in some cases you have to kind of roll up your sleeves and solve things you really have probably no business solving, but if they don't get solved, the things won't happen. In this case, like laptop finance is a good example. Probably have no business getting into that, but it's not really clear that anyone else is doing it. So if we want people to get to work, let's think about it.
Yeah. If you want the placement, you're going to have to, enable them to do the work, which is, like I said, it's a very alien concept to certainly from my recruitment background. In terms of, I guess, conversation wise, I honestly think we could talk for hours and hours, but we don't have hours. Is there anything, that you think actually this is what's happening where I am, that we could really learn from in other areas, so in the US, in the UK, etc.? Is there anything that you've seen happen in your markets that actually you go, well, they do that way better than we do, or
in terms of ways we get inspired and learn from other markets? Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So many things. I think in particular, the markets we work in still default more to service models and service approaches as opposed to tech. So I think we learned that the hard way. I think there's still an implicit trust in someone you can call to help you out with something, even if you have to pay more than a tech solution. But I do think the world has to be shifting towards more automated tools. And so we've been looking abroad. Willo's a great example, but there's so many different examples of ways that technology is improving the candidate experience, engagement levels, the data collection, the data processing and synthesis to make better hiring decisions. So we've been excited about that. I think we've been excited and haven't yet activated any of this, but looking at the way that different business models have been able to, let's call them boot camps, but it's not just boot camps, but these different business models have figured out ways to identify areas where there's skill shortages and market demand for skills that can be filled with a reasonably priced and reasonably timed program, and then linking people to those jobs. I think more and more we're going to need to see those kind of university alternatives. They don't have to be university alternatives, but I think they can be university alternatives for young people to get access to these careers. I'm kind of hopeful. Look, college university is a wonderful experience, and I'm hopeful many people will continue to have that experience. But I also think for many people, spending the thousands of dollars and the years getting kind of a potentially unrespected, irrelevant degree may not make as much sense as doing a 6 or 12-month boot camp around UX design or digital storytelling or something else. So,
or anything that isn't,
or anything isn't.
I agree with you there, and I think from a university perspective, again, so speaking from the UK perspective, fees have gone through the roof. It's incredibly expensive to go somewhere and get a degree in history, when what we need is people with skills that are going to develop for the challenges in the future. And I'm not saying, history is a terrible degree, and please don't get offended, everybody that's ever done history. I did geography, but it's so important that we're developing the skills, especially if, as you say, the demographic of the area, the average age is 18. There's a huge opportunity in Sub-Saharan Africa to actually go, right, well, these are the skills the world are going to need. Let's put people through academies, and then we become the engine that, that helps the world get through the challenges of the future.
And hopefully starting to look beyond software engineering. And one of the things I lament is everybody jumps immediately to the problem of software engineering, which is real, and that's a great career track. But there are so many other lesser considered areas in the global digital economy where remote talent from places like Africa and Asia can do exceptionally well. sales development rep, customer success, recruiting. I mean, I think one of the things we've been thinking about is even a business model as we get better and better at identifying recruiting talent, training recruiting talent. Why couldn't young people in our market build really robust careers supporting recruiting functions for companies anywhere in the world? So I think we see this as a really exciting area for more innovation.
Yeah, especially using async tools. All of your college graduates record their interviews, do their tests in the US. They get sent to, your market, and then the people within that market assess them, send them back. Like, it makes total sense, to me anyway. But then I do run an async business, so I'm going to say that. So just to kind of wrap up, it'd be really good to get, just some advice that you think would be relevant to either your audience or just, recruiters in general from your experience and things that you've learned. Usually I ask for 3 bits of advice, or, for candidates that might be applying for a job that you're advertising, I guess.
A lot of different potential bits of advice, and based on what we were talking about today, one is, of course, starting to think more creatively about where your talent pipeline is coming from. I think that more and more companies might get left behind in the talent race if they only focus on people within a 30-minute commute of whatever their offices are, and more looking and experimenting for models to build truly remote-first companies. And remote first positions, particularly around those areas that can be done remotely. I think another one for companies is kind of learning how to be headhunters. One of the things I've noted is that the traditional world of posting a job, screening CVs, lining up interviews, we're in too dynamic and choppy a talent marketplace for that to really work anymore. I think that everybody needs to learn the practice, the discipline of what you pay an executive search firm to do. Think critically about what the role is, where might a person in a market build those skills and experience, what companies, what job types, go out market, map the market, and then learn how to reach out and cultivate that talent. I think more and more for middle to senior talent, companies are going to have to learn how to identify passive talent pools as opposed to just active. And it is a different approach. And I note over and over again that most talent acquisition teams and professionals don't often have that skill set. It's a little bit more of a process they're running. And the last one, maybe for candidates, thanks for opening up to what advice you might give to candidates. Make your own opportunities. I think we're in such a dynamic marketplace, particularly if you want to work in a startup. Don't wait for a job to be posted. You find a company you like, you find a leader that you think you might learn something from, reach out and think critically. What is this overlap between what you're passionate about and what you can offer and what this company likely needs? And if you do get lucky enough to have a conversation, don't kind of sit there reactively like you're getting interviewed. Take charge, figure out what that company might need, what problems are they struggling with, and try to brainstorm your own role and where you might fit in the company. I'm always surprised. That's not a skill that many people are taught or is even talked about if you're a job candidate, but I'm always impressed and stunned at how many jobs are created ones for a candidate, as opposed to a very disciplined, we had this need, we wrote a JD, we posted it, we hired somebody. So taking charge.
The impetus to do that is fairly obvious, especially if you're talking about somebody that's just received 2,000 applications for the job that they posted. Imagine if you were the person that thought, this company's going to need somebody like me in the next 2 months. Rather than wait to be one of 2,000 applicants, I'll be the person that's gone to them with the idea of this is what you need. It's a really good point, but one that very, very rarely ever happens. It's probably happened twice to me in my entire career, for 7 years of which I've been a hiring manager. Paul, thank you so much. Really great advice for both parties. And if anybody wants to get hold of you, what's the best way to
find me on LinkedIn or
contact you?
send me an email, paul@shortlist.net.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And yeah, we'll speak
Woody.
again soon,
Take
no
care.
doubt.